Thank you again, Mayor Miller, for agreeing to talk with us and take questions from the public through the Center for Collaborative Journalism. Of course, we have just made your 100-day milestone in the past week, and so the first question we have is, progress is being made on residential blight, but this person would like to know how commercial blight can be addressed. Surely through planning and zoning, licensing, or some agency, there is a way to prevent abandonment of shopping centers, which then decay and drag the area down. A recent and ridiculous example is the desertion of the Presidential Parkway shopping centers and startup of the one on Gridlock Bass Road. What do you think can be done?
Well, we're already addressing that. We'll have a new initiative that's coming out on commercial blight very soon. As a matter of fact, we put together a list of 10 that we're starting with to begin the process. It's going to start with the blight tax, an inspection by our code enforcement. The blight tax is up to a 7 times tax. We've used that on residential so far. It has not been used on commercial blight. Our first letter is going to go out on that probably in the next week, if not sooner. As far as the Presidential Parkway, we've got some really good plans for that area, so I don't want to talk about that too much, but just to say that we're in conversations with groups to repurpose to that area. We believe there's other alternative uses that you can have for that area in Bloomfield, and we're very positive about things that's going to happen to that very soon. We do know that planning and zoning has to be part of this. We have been in discussions about reviewing some of the policies they have and updating those. It's been quite a while since it's been done, and I think it needs to be updated for sure. Also looking at the possibility of changing how we do things at planning and zoning, the structure, how it's set up. Just a long conversation we got to have with the commissioners about that to see if Bibb County is the only county doing it right or if we need to make some changes. So I think that does contribute to it a little bit, but we have to be more stringent on our code enforcement and catch things before they happen. I think under this administration and this particular department we have for code enforcement, we'll be able to get ahead of a lot of that, including the blight for residential, but also commercial. So when business come to town and they're traveling through our roads and they see a lot of commercial blight, it's the same thing. It's negative to our community. It doesn't help as far as economic development, so we've recognized that. I was just out looking at some of the structures just 2 days ago when we did the demos for the residential, and we get calls on the same properties all the time, and they're not necessarily big properties, but there are properties like the Just a Biscuit on Vineville. I probably get 5 calls a day on that property, so it's a high traffic area. The property we have over on Beaconsfield, of course, I probably get 10 calls a week on that or more, because people see that when they're traveling through the new corridor, and it's something we got to address. That happened to be a burn, so it's a little different situation, but we can't allow absentee owners in the commercial, and most of these are absentee owners, to just invest in their properties, speculative, and not upkeep them, not maintain them. There have been some talk about a vacancy tax, and they've used them in other places. I'm not sure we're going there yet, but it's certainly something we can consider. We just need to make sure we've got all the tools in the tool belt, and we're going to be more aggressive on the commercial next because we do feel like it's been neglected for a while. I was asked recently by the media why I felt like commercial blight has not been tackled in the past. One reason I think it hasn't is because people who own commercial property typically have more clout, more money, more connected, and they put up a fight. And sometimes people don't want to fight that fight. But I think we've shown that we're going to take the fight to them, and we're going to make them do what's right. And we're not going to back down because someone's popular in the community or owns a lot of property in the community or have connections with the community. They're going to have to be good business owners and property owners just like everyone else is expected to do.
Now, considering the passage of Georgia's new election laws and the upcoming lost referendum, why hasn't there been an at-large person named to the Bibb Board of Elections? And staying on that topic, the landlord at the old Westgate Shopping Center does not want the outside storage on the property, but the election supervisor says they're out of room. What are your plans to fix that?
Well, a couple of things. I think that I have not recommended anyone for the Board of Elections position yet. I do understand they elected a chairperson already, Darius Maynard, and I think that's an excellent choice. He was on my transition team, and I think he'll do them well. The 5th member has not been named yet because I wanted the the new members, and you've got pretty much a new makeup of board members there. I wanted them to have the opportunity to have input on who that nonpartisan position was going to be. If they recommend someone else to me, I'll certainly consider that, make a recommendation to the commission. If they do not recommend anyone, then I will take the nominees from the previous Board of Elections board, and I'll make one person that recommendation to the commission for their consideration, probably in the next meeting or two. As far as the Board of Election office themselves, they've been wanting to expand their operations there. I've got other plans about the location, the future location of the Board of Elections. I don't believe it's going to be at the current locations, and I don't believe there's going to be an expansion there. I think it's cost prohibited, and I do know that they're working on some good things there at the Westgate Shopping Center for their own usage there for storage, and they've been in conversations with people to improve that area a lot, and I'm certainly going to be supportive of that. I just don't see us expanding that location on the property there at Westgate right now.
Of course, you have the health department that is going to be exiting Emory Highway as well. Any thoughts? It just came to my mind there. Any thoughts about what might happen to that half?
Well, I certainly wouldn't move Board of Elections over there as well. I think that what you'll find out with that property after the corridor is complete, it's going to be a very valuable property. It's a property we don't need to have governmental offices at, paying little to no rent. So we'll talk about that in the near future. It is part of the total plan that we have for that area. A lot of that property, though, there's an attad, so we have to be mindful of that, what goes there and what kind of money it could generate for that area. So we certainly want to maximize the usage and the monetary value of that property and not just be governmental offices.
And explain TAD for those who might not know.
Yeah, which basically means that the tax, the new growth that's generated on buildings and property in that area have to be used for that particular area. It doesn't go into the county coffers overall to be used throughout the community, and it can be a good tool to improve an area. And certainly that property we have right around the Coliseum could be used for that purposes. There was some talk about using part of the money to maintain the Riverside Cemetery when they was having those conversations, and other projects along that way. So it's certainly something that we want to be mindful of, but I think we have to look at the best use for that property over there. It's certainly going to increase in value because of the interstate improvements that are being made there, and I don't think we need to have governmental offices right there taking up that space and paying no taxes, also just basically having a pass-through for rent.
Now, we briefly talked last month about the stimulus package that's expected to lock Macon-Bibb County over $70 million. Are there any developments about how that money might be spent, or any additional funds that could be coming in the form of COVID relief?
Well, I don't know there's any new regulations since the last time we've spoken. We get updates, and we're in constant conversation with our local senators, representatives, as well as the Biden administration. Also national memberships that we're members of. There's many people or many counties and many states that are doing things a little different on how they're going to spend their money, but we really don't know until we get the regulations in. We continue to believe that we will use some of those funds to take care of those experiencing homelessness, to take care of those that need affordable housing, to address the food desert issue we have here in Macon-Bibb County in certain areas of the community, but also our tourism. Tourism has suffered over the last year because of COVID, and hotel-motel tax has gone down, which has adversely affected a lot of our museums and attractions that we need to make sure we improve. Also, the county has lost money in revenue because of this, and we have to make sure that we made ourselves whole, because that money eventually would go into our general fund to help our taxpayers recover. The small business is another part that there may be other buckets of money that don't necessarily go through the $70 million we get in two payments. So we're going to make sure that our small business owners get tapped into where they need to go to get the money, as well as our health department, as well as anybody like the evictions that's going on, the landlords. That's not money that's coming directly to us, but we can help them through other agencies get connected so that money doesn't go unused if people really need the money. So we're going to be an advocate, a place that's going to convene a lot of that money, but not necessarily transfer that. And we're going to have use of some of the money that we have coming in from a county government.
Now, department heads are submitting their budget requests now. You've already mentioned spending about $3 million to strengthen the doors in the jail, but what are your priorities when it comes to spending, and how are you looking at the whole budget process that might be different from predecessors?
Well, I mean, we all have our priorities. Public safety is one of my priorities. Keeping Macon-Bibb County clean is another one of my priorities. So I think what you'll see is that I'm going to tend to give a little bit more in those areas. Police, fire, 911, EMA, those certainly going to be high on my list. I signed an emergency procurement order yesterday to get the $3 million necessary for the sheriff to make sure they have a safe environment over there for our deputies. Unfortunately, I'm got elected to an office that at the time of my swearing in is going to inherit some debt. There's a lot of new debt coming on to my plate that the previous administration did not have. And that's something that I'm going to have to work through. For instance, we have a $6 million pay scale now, but we have the same money we had last year. We have a pension actuary that's going to increase by several $1 million that was not had before. We also have money that was not allocated for debt before on your SPLOST projects. So there's going to be several $1 million that are on my plate to pay for the nice things that the previous commission did for the recreation departments and things like that, because they front-loaded all those projects. You have the OPEB commitments that they made there for other post-employment benefits. A lot of that was paid out of the SPLOST money, but that has already been exhausted. So now it's going to come out of the general fund. So I'm looking at probably somewhere around 15, 16, 17 million dollars that I've got to come up with that the previous administration did not have to. And we're working on the same budgetary numbers we have as far as money coming in. That's why it's important to look at wasteful spending, and we have tried to address that to make sure that we are more efficient, and we're doing that with our solid waste department. And we're also saving money by doing those convenience centers as opposed to doing a landfill. And I think all those things are going to be cost savings that we'll have that we'll be able to supplement that for the budget, as well as the OLOS that's coming up.
Now, are you including things like cost overruns? We know that the City Auditorium is one of the projects that is slated to be renovated under SPLOST dollars, but now we also have the COVID bump in prices for construction materials. So is that something else that's going to throw the budget kind of?
Well, I don't think that's going to throw my budget off, because those are SPLOST projects that may have contingencies with them. I think we'll be able to cover those through better negotiations, better pricing. We're going to have some increased cost in building for those building that we have. We've also have some money like for a potential courthouse in the future that has about $40 million, and we have not allocated those funds yet. They're still later in the timeline. So I think we can be able to adjust things as far as the buildings are concerned. That's not going to affect our budget. Mostly what's affecting our budget is those upfront projects where they borrowed money on and we're having to pay the debt on them now. And that's come out of my budget as opposed to my predecessor's budget. And it makes it difficult when you have a balanced budget and you try to build your budget on $160, $170 million, but yet this year you may have $180 million worth of expenses, but you're still only taking $170. So you have to make sure that you handle the budget appropriately. And I hope this commission realizes that it's not the same budget that they had under Rickard's administration. We have a little different priority, but we're also inheriting a lot more debt. So I'm going to have to look at things a lot more closely, on top of the fact that everyone in the county just got a raise. So quite honestly, everyone's budget requests are going to be up. As expected, you have a new mayor that they believe they have relationships with, and I'm sure that some of those people are going to assume that I'm going to be very friendly to them in their budget because of our relationship. And I'm going to do my part. But at the same time, we're going to have to hold the line on a lot of these budget considerations because we are still in the middle of a pandemic, and we have to make sure that we keep things in lines and be more conservative on our budget. But there is good news on the horizon. We are very excited about the OLOS. That's going to give us an excellent opportunity to roll back taxes, 7 to 8 mills at the full when it's fully implemented. Going to make us very competitive across the Middle Georgia area. Going to be one of the largest tax decreases we've ever had here in Macon-Bibb County, and a lot of that's going to be paid by people who don't reside here.
Kuma just announced during your 100-day celebration their $21 million expansion. And through Twitter, we have a question. Do you support unions, and how do you feel about a company using the city's tax dollars to build and operate, and in return, they pay people who work for them almost half of what they should make?
Well, I don't get involved in the national issues like that. It's no local control on whether we have a union or not. My whole focus is to try to help Macon-Bibb County out. Kuma still pays very good money. They pay a competitive salary to a lot of the other businesses here in Macon. But that fight about unions or non-unions is certainly their business and not my business. We are not giving tax breaks to them unreasonably. They're paying pilot money that we get over a long period of time. But they're added value to Macon-Bibb County. They're going to help our community. That $21.8 million expansion is going to increase their capacity here. It shows a long-term commitment to Macon-Bibb County. There's a lot of people who love to work at Kuma, and they're going to be hiring people. Just like the $11 million we just spent at Schnitzer Steel as well. That's another expanding business in Macon-Bibb County, which shows us that we must be doing something right if companies not only want to locate here, but they want to expand here in Macon-Bibb County. So, I try not to get into the union or non-union. There's pros and there's cons on both of those. They have their own procedures that are set up to do that, and their own fair elections that they have. And I'll leave their, running their business to themselves and worry about what we do for the Macon-Bibb County taxpayers.
You mentioned pilot payment in lieu of taxes. Just in case someone is watching that doesn't understand that, can you just give us a little quick summation of what that is?
Well, typically, one of the incentives we offer to companies that come here, and like our Urban Tissue, the $400 million project and expansion on top of that, to give them an incentive to get the property they have and all the real property and personal property they have. We give them a payment in lieu of taxes, which means they get a tax break on all this information up front, all this property they have up front, but they pay it back over a longer period of time, maybe 10 years or 20 years, to the school system, industrial authority, and the Bibb County government themselves. A smaller amount, but over a longer period of time, which actually gets us more money in the future. But it gives them a tax break in the very beginning to do the things they need to do. And some of that's based on how big of a company it is, how many jobs they're bringing to Macon-Bibb County, and how much revenue they're going to bring to the county. So it's an incentive that we encourage businesses to use that want to come here to save a little money on the front end, but over a long period of time, it helps Macon-Bibb County out. And we enjoy cashing those checks every year that we get from the industrial authority, both when I was on the school board, as well as now being in the mayor's office, because it does add to our budget, and we've already spent that money up.
And it's my understanding, too, that with some of these expansions like Kumo, that this additional building could even fall under the original pilot agreement so that there's not, another break being given.
Right. That's true. And the other thing is, too, is part of the OLOS, even though we're going to roll taxes back 7 or 8 mills, there was language in there that we placed in there for the pilots to allow us to still base the pilot on the previous millage rate. So if the previous millage rate was 20.33, we'll continue to collect that, even though our millage rate is going to go down to, we expect 13 or below for the county. And we did that because we wanted to make sure that Bibb County could capture that money that we negotiated for when we gave those incentives. And that's something that we had the Senate add that to it for us before it crossed back over to the House. And that was one of the changes that was made by our request.
Is that just retroactive, or will future pilot payments also be based on the former millage rate, or will it be based on the new millage rate?
The new companies will be based on the new millage rate, if there is a new millage rate at the time they come in. But this is something that we made those infrastructure moves. We made those tax incentives at the time based on that millage rate and that projection over a period of time. And we certainly didn't want to lose that money because it could result in about a $16 million loss over the next 10 years.
So if the OLOS passes, that would be even greater incentive for new industry to move to Macon-Bibb County.
Oh, yeah. But most certainly it's going to be an incentive, because when you draw a circle around our location and everything we have from infrastructure to water to access to Savannah Port through Atlanta, it's a situation where people look at their net benefit, and the net benefit to them is going to be more substantial if we have a lower tax rate. And we also believe it's going to allow us some flexibility because of our low tax rate to not have to give so many incentives. We can focus more on getting jobs for people here in Macon-Bibb County. We can place incentives on their particular deal to make sure they hire a certain percentage of people here from Macon-Bibb County. We can't do that without these other, without a lower millage rate, really.
And of course, we've touched on road conditions as well a couple of months ago, but we have another submission from the public, and I think that there's some explanation, because they're asking, what are the plans for repaving our terrible roads in Macon? Wimbish Road, Forest Hill Drive from Wimbish to Vineville, Napier Avenue, Riverly Drive, Old Clinton, and Pionono Avenue, and many more. Now, I know Pionono is a state route, so that's its own special exemption. Can you explain about that and again reiterate what you're doing about roads?
Well, we always have a plan. We have a company that goes out and they evaluate the roads that we have to see who's the most traveled roads, the ones that need to be replaced first, the condition of the road, the age of the roads. They make recommendations to the county. We try to spread that out equity amongst all the commissioners, and we've done that. So they have participated in it as well. The money's allocated based on how much we have, and it's never going to be enough to take care of all these needs at one time. So they prioritize them first, and then we have a large bucket of money, and then we try to fund as many of those projects as we can each year. And it comes up for renewal every year to the commissioners, and they decide which projects they want on that list. If it's a state road, the state's responsibility, they dictate when that happens and how much money they're going to spend on that. So we do have several projects we're working with the DOT on that may be on state roads that we're having done, a couple of roundabouts, on Eisenhower Parkway that we know that's going to happen this year. They're working on the 7 Bridges area over there in that potential roundabout after they get through that bridge work on the other side. Forest Hill's another, area we're trying to decide now, do we still need that expansion over there? Do we still need the widening of that road? Has it outserved its use? The request before was because people were going to the Macon Mall. Well, they're no longer going to the Macon Mall right there, so do you need that? Do you need to tear down the trees and expand that road, or has the temperature changed in the area where people are saying maybe that's not a need that we have there, maybe we use that money somewhere else, because we do have to match some of the funding there. Maybe it's Bass Road or maybe it's Wimbish Road. So those are conversations that we're going to have with commissioners and we're having with the DOT right now.
Anything else you'd like to add?
No, I just want to continue to remind people we're going to have some other initiatives coming up soon. The second half of our next 100 days, we're going to expect increased awareness of Clean Streets Matters, the blighted homes. We're going to add a little bit more bite to those functions, some more money to those as we get through this budget cycle. We do have 2 or 3 items, out-of-the-box items I keep referring to that we believe are going to change how we do business here in Macon. We have some economic development opportunities very soon that we'll be announcing, but we're keeping those close to the vest because we're doing our due diligence. So I'm very excited about the next 100 days. I think we're going to continue to build the momentum that we have here now. And I'm looking forward to a day that we can vote on that 1-cent sales tax on the referendum. Remembering that 70% of the money is paid by people outside of Macon-Bibb County, but we'll get all the benefit from that money. And I hope people will look at that and make a right decision. It's going to enable us to really do the second part of the pay scale for our public safety, which is going to help us tackle some of the crime situations we have right now.